She thought the message would change everything, and it did, just not in the way she imagined. When Maria Santos opened Tinder that humid Tuesday evening in Manila, she had no idea the man on the other side of the screen was already planning how to make her disappear. The notification glowed on her phone. A match, a message, a smile that looked warm enough to trust. 5 days later, a fisherman would pull a black duffel bag from Manila Bay at dawn, the water still dark and heavy with secrets. Inside, police would find what remained of Maria. Her phone, cracked but functional, would reveal her last text message sent at 6:14 in the evening. "I'm meeting him now. Wish me luck." Her daughter would read those words and feel her world collapse. But that morning, as the fisherman radioed the Coast Guard and seagulls circled overhead, no one yet knew her name. They only knew that someone had tried very hard to make sure she would never be found. Maria had not been looking for love. Not really. She had been looking for something quieter. Companionship, maybe. Someone to text during lunch breaks. Someone who might understand what it felt like to rebuild a life after it had been dismantled by divorce. She was 42 years old and worked as an administrative assistant at a call center in Quezon City. Her shifts were long and predictable. She answered emails, filed reports, organized schedules for managers who barely remembered her name, but she was good at her job. Reliable. The kind of person who stayed late when others called in sick. Her coworkers liked her. She remembered birthdays, brought extra snacks to share, asked about people's families. She made the fluorescent-lit office feel a little less cold. Her life had her rhythm. Wake at 5:30, make breakfast for her 2 children. Her daughter, Isabella, was 19 and studying nursing at a state university. Her son, Miguel, was 16 and obsessed with basketball. She took the jeepney to work, the same route every morning, squeezed between strangers who smelled like sampaguita and sweat. She worked her shift. She came home. She cooked dinner. She helped Miguel with homework even though he pretended not to need it. She video called her parents in Pampanga every Sunday, sent them money every month. Her life was full but lonely. The kind of loneliness that sits beside you at the dinner table, even when your children are there. Her marriage had ended 3 years earlier. Her husband, Ronaldo, had left her for a younger woman he met at a construction site where he worked as a foreman. The divorce had been ugly. He fought her for custody, even though he barely saw the kids. He accused her of being cold, distant, too focused on work. She didn't fight back. She let the lawyers handle it. When it was over, she felt relieved and empty at the same time. She kept the apartment, a small 2-bedroom unit on the 4th floor of a building with peeling paint and a broken elevator. The walls were thin. She could hear her neighbors arguing, laughing, living their lives in full volume. Her own life felt muted by comparison. Her friends had been telling her to date again. Her closest friend, Clara, who worked in the same call center, had been especially insistent. "You're still young, Maria. You deserve to be happy." Maria wasn't sure she believed that. She felt used up, stretched thin. But one evening, after a particularly long shift, Clara sat beside her in the break room and pulled out her phone. "Just try it," she said. "You don't have to meet anyone. Just see what's out there." Tinder. Maria had heard of it but never imagined it was for someone like her. Women on dating apps were young, confident, knew how to take flattering photos. Maria was none of those things. But Clara was persistent. She helped Maria create a profile, chose a photo from a family gathering where Maria was smiling in a simple yellow dress. "You look beautiful," Clara said. Maria doubted it but didn't argue. The matches came faster than she expected. Men of all ages. Some sent crude messages immediately. Others seemed nice but generic. Copy-pasted greetings that felt hollow. Maria ignored most of them. She wasn't sure what she was even looking for. Then, on her 3rd day on the app, she matched with Mark Rivera. His profile picture showed a man in his mid-40s, clean-cut, wearing a business suit. He had kind eyes. His bio was simple. Businessman Cebu in Manila, looking for real connection. He messaged her first. "You have a kind smile. I'd love to get to know you." It wasn't poetic, but it felt sincere. Maria hesitated, then replied, "Thank you. That's very sweet." Their conversation unfolded slowly. He didn't rush. He asked about her work, her children, her hobbies. He told her he was a widower. His wife had died of cancer 2 years ago. He said he understood what it felt like to lose someone, to have to rebuild from nothing. Maria felt something shift inside her. Here was someone who might actually understand. They texted every day. Good morning messages. Updates throughout the day. He asked how her shift went. He remembered details she mentioned. When she told him Miguel had a basketball game, Mark asked how it went the next day. Small things. But they mattered. After 2 weeks, Maria told Clara about him. They were sitting in the call center cafeteria, eating pandesal and drinking bad coffee. He seems different, Maria said. He actually listens. Clara was supportive but cautious. Just be careful, you don't really know him yet. Maria nodded, but she felt defensive. She wanted this to be real. She needed it to be real. That evening, Mark suggested a video call. Maria panicked. She wasn't ready to be seen, to be judged. But she agreed. When his face appeared on her screen, she felt relief. He looked like his photos. Older maybe, but handsome in a worn, weathered way. His voice was deep and calming. He asked to see her apartment. She showed him the small living room, the kitchen, the balcony with its view of other buildings. He complimented her. It's cozy. It feels like home. They talked for an hour. He told her about his business, something vague involving exports and logistics. He said he traveled between Manila and Cebu frequently. He asked about her dreams. No one had asked her that in years. By the end of the third week, Mark told her he was falling for her. Maria's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but felt afraid. What if this was a mistake? What if he disappeared like everyone else? But he didn't disappear. He was consistent. He called when he said he would. He texted goodnight every evening. He made her feel like she mattered. Isabella noticed her mother smiling more. "Are you seeing someone?" she asked one evening while they washed dishes together. Maria blushed. "Maybe. It's early." Isabella didn't say anything, but her expression was skeptical. She had inherited her mother's caution, but she had also inherited her father's cynicism. Mark suggested they meet in person. He said he would be in Manila the following week for business and wanted to take her to dinner. Maria's heart raced. She told Clara, who insisted she meet him somewhere public. "And text me the address," Clara said. "I want to know where you are." Maria agreed. They decided on a restaurant in Makati, a place Maria had never been but looked nice online. She spent an hour choosing what to wear, finally settling on a simple blue dress. She felt ridiculous, like a teenager going on a first date. But she also felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Mark arrived exactly on time. He was taller than she expected, dressed in slacks and a crisp white shirt. He smiled when he saw her, and Maria felt her nervousness ease slightly. He was a gentleman. He pulled out her chair, ordered wine, asked about her day. The conversation flowed easily. He was charming, but not overbearing. He told stories about his travels, asked about her children, listened when she talked about her parents. When the check came, he paid without hesitation. He walked her to the jeepney stop, kissed her cheek, and told her he couldn't wait to see her again. Maria floated home. She texted Clara. It was perfect. He's perfect. Clara responded with a smiley face but added, "Just keep being careful." They went on 2 more dates that week, coffee at a mall, a walk in Rizal Park. Each time Mark was attentive and respectful. He didn't pressure her for more. He talked about the future in vague, hopeful terms. Maybe they could travel together. Maybe he could meet her children someday. Maria began to let herself imagine it, a life where she wasn't alone, where someone chose her, where she could start over. But small inconsistencies began to appear. Mark was always vague about where he lived. He said Parañaque, but never invited her over. He was evasive about his work. When Maria asked to see photos of his late wife, he said it was too painful. He changed the subject quickly. Maria didn't push. She understood grief. She understood not wanting to revisit the past. But Isabella didn't understand. She had been watching her mother fall for this man and felt uneasy. One evening, while Maria was at work, Isabella searched for Mark Rivera online. She found nothing. No Facebook, no Instagram, no LinkedIn, no business records. The only trace of him was the Tinder profile. She showed her findings to her mother that night. "Mama, I can't find anything about him. Are you sure he's who he says he is?" Maria bristled. "Not everyone broadcasts their life online, Isabella. He's private. That's not a crime." But doubt had been planted. Maria noticed things she'd ignored before. The way Mark's phone buzzed constantly during their dates. The way he never wanted photos taken together. The way he deflected any question that went too deep. Then, 4 weeks into their relationship, Mark asked her to meet him somewhere more private. He said he'd rented a condo in Pasay for a weekend getaway. "I want us to have time alone, just the 2 of us. I want to show you how serious I am." Maria's stomach twisted. It felt too soon, too fast. She told Clara, who immediately objected. "Don't go, Maria. Not to a private place. Not yet." But Mark was persuasive. He sent her messages throughout the day. "I would never hurt you. You know that. I just want to be close to you." Maria wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that this was real, that someone could love her, that she deserved this chance. She told herself she was being paranoid. She told herself Isabella and Clara were overreacting. On Friday evening, Maria agreed. She would meet him at the condo the next day. Just for dinner, she told herself. Just to talk. She could leave whenever she wanted. She packed a small bag with a change of clothes, just in case. She told Isabella she'd be back by evening. Isabella made her promise to text every hour. "Please, Mama, just to be safe," Maria promised. She hugged her daughter and left, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and dread. She took the jeepney to Passy, checking her phone obsessively. Mark had sent the address, a building near the bay. When she arrived, he was waiting outside, leaning against the car she'd never seen before. He smiled, but something in his eyes had changed, something Maria couldn't name but felt in her bones. She ignored it. She had come this far. She stepped forward, and the door to her disappearance opened wide. The condo building looked newer than Maria expected, glass and concrete, with a security guard who barely glanced at them as Mark led her through the lobby. He held her hand, his grip firm, almost possessive. Maria's phone buzzed in her purse. Isabella checking in already. She pulled it out to respond, but Mark gently touched her wrist. "Put it away for now," he said, smiling. "Let's just be present with each other." She hesitated, then slipped the phone back into her bag. They took the elevator to the 4th floor in silence. Mark seemed distracted, his jaw tight. Maria tried to make conversation. "Have you been here before?" He nodded. "A few times. It's a good location, quiet." The elevator doors opened, and he led her down a hallway that smelled like fresh paint and cleaning chemicals. The unit was sparse, almost empty. A small couch sat in the living room facing a blank wall. No television, no decorations. The kitchen had a single chair pushed against the counter. Maria felt her unease deepen. "You just rented this?" she asked. Mark closed the door behind them and locked it. The sound of the bolt sliding into place made her flinch. "Yeah, short term. I don't need much." He moved to the kitchen and pulled 2 bottles of San Miguel from a small refrigerator. "Drink?" Maria shook her head. "I'm okay." He opened one for himself and leaned against the counter, watching her. His demeanor had shifted. The warmth from their previous dates was gone, replaced by something colder, more calculating. She sat on the edge of the couch, clutching her purse. "So what did you want to talk about?" Mark took a long drink, then set the bottle down. "I wanted us to have privacy, to really connect, away from everyone." He moved closer, sitting beside her, too close. Maria shifted away slightly. He noticed. "You seem nervous." She forced a smile. "I'm fine. It's just different being here, alone." He reached for her hand. His palm was sweaty. "You don't need to be nervous around me, Maria. We're past that now, aren't we?" She nodded, but her heart was pounding. She thought about Isabella's warning, about Clara's concern, about all the small red flags she'd ignored because she wanted so badly to believe in this. Mark's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Once, twice, 3 times. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. Maria saw the screen light up with notifications from what looked like a dating app. Her stomach dropped. "Is everything okay?" she asked. He grabbed the phone and shoved it into his pocket. "Just work, nothing important." But his tone had an edge now. Defensive. Maria stood up. "I think I should go. This doesn't feel right." Mark stood too, blocking her path to the door. "You just got here. Stay a little longer." It wasn't a request. His voice had hardened. Maria felt her throat tighten. "I told my daughter I'd be home by evening. She's expecting me." Mark smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Text her. Tell her you're staying longer." Maria's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. She typed quickly under the table, trying to keep her movements subtle. "I'm fine. Having dinner. We'll update soon." She sent it to Isabella, but her fingers hovered over the screen. She wanted to type more, to say something was wrong, but Mark was watching her too closely. She put the phone away. "There. Done." He relaxed slightly, sitting back down. "Good. Now we can enjoy our time together." He patted the couch beside him. Maria sat, but every nerve in her body screamed to run. She tried to keep her voice steady. "Tell me more about your business. You've never really explained what you do." Mark's jaw clenched. "Why does that matter? I'm here with you now. That's what's important." The deflection was sharp, almost angry. Maria felt the air in the room shift. She had pushed too far. "I was just curious," she said softly, trying to de-escalate. "I want to know more about you." He leaned back, studying her. "You want to know more about me? Fine. I'm someone who's tired of playing games. Tired of women who say they want something real but then question everything. You said you trusted me, Maria. Or was that a lie?" His words felt like an accusation. Maria shook her head. "I do trust you. I just think maybe we move too fast. Maybe we should slow down." Mark stood abruptly, pacing the small living room. His energy had become erratic, unpredictable. Slow down. Everyone always wants to slow down. You know how many women I've talked to who say they want a relationship but then ghost me? Do you know how exhausting that is? Maria felt fear creeping up her spine. This wasn't the man she'd been texting for weeks. This was someone else entirely, someone who'd been hiding beneath the surface. "I'm not ghosting you," she said carefully. "I'm right here. I just think we should take our time." He stopped pacing and turned to face her. "You're right here because I asked you to be, because I made you feel special, because I knew exactly what to say." The admission hung in the air. Maria's blood went cold. "What do you mean?" Mark laughed, a bitter sound. "Come on, Maria, you're not stupid. You knew what this was. A lonely, divorced woman desperate for attention. You think I didn't see that? You think I didn't plan for it?" She stood, her legs shaking. "I want to leave, now." He moved to the door, blocking it with his body. "You're not leaving, not yet." Maria's voice rose. "You can't keep me here. Let me go." His expression shifted again, this time to something almost sad. "I don't want to keep you here. I want you to want to stay. But you're like all the others. You take what you want, and then you leave." Maria's mind raced. She thought about screaming, but would anyone hear? The building had seemed empty. She thought about fighting, but he was bigger, stronger. She thought about her children. About Isabella waiting for her next text. About Miguel who still needed his mother. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "I have kids. They're waiting for me. Just let me go and I won't tell anyone about this." Mark shook his head. "You'll tell everyone. That's what women do. They ruin everything." He pulled out his phone and started scrolling through something. "You want to know what I do? I meet women like you, women who think they're special, who think they deserve love, and I show them the truth." He turned the phone toward her. On the screen were photos, women, different women. Some Maria recognized from dating apps she'd seen while scrolling. Others were strangers. But they all had something in common. They all looked vulnerable, hopeful, desperate. "How many?" Maria whispered. Mark shrugged. "Does it matter? You're here now. That's what counts." Maria felt bile rise in her throat. She had walked into a trap. Every kind word, every patient gesture, every promise had been bait, and she had taken it willingly. She looked around the room for anything she could use. A weapon, an escape route. The windows were sealed. The door was locked. Her phone was in her purse, but he was watching her too closely. "Why?" she asked, stalling for time. "Why do this?" Mark sat back down on the couch, suddenly looking tired. "Because I can. Because women like you make it easy. You want so badly to be loved that you ignore every warning sign. You ignore your friends, your family, your own instincts. You come to a stranger's apartment because he tells you what you want to hear." He was right, and the truth of it made Maria want to weep. She had ignored everything, every doubt, every red flag, because she had been lonely. Because she had wanted to believe that someone could see past her exhaustion and her stretch marks and her failed marriage and still choose her. Her phone buzzed again. Isabella Maria lunged for her purse, but Mark was faster. He grabbed it first, pulling out her phone. The screen showed multiple missed calls from her daughter, messages asking if she was okay. Mark read them aloud, his voice mocking. "Mama, please answer. I'm worried. Mama, where are you?" He looked at Maria. Such a devoted daughter. Too bad her mother doesn't have better judgment. He powered off the phone and pocketed it. Maria felt her last connection to the outside world disappear. She was alone with him now, completely isolated. "What are you going to do to me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark stood and moved toward her. "I haven't decided yet. Maybe nothing. Maybe we just sit here and talk until you understand what you did wrong. Maybe I'll let you go when you learn your lesson." But his eyes told a different story. There was violence in them now, a darkness that made Maria's survival instincts scream. She backed away from him, her shoulders hitting the wall. "Please don't hurt me. I'll do whatever you want. I won't tell anyone. I promise." He stopped inches from her face. "You promise. Everyone promises. But promises don't mean anything, do they?" Maria thought about her training from years ago, a self-defense class she'd taken after her divorce. The instructor had said to go for the eyes, the throat, the groin, to fight dirty if you had to fight at all. But her body felt frozen. Terror had locked her muscles. Mark reached out and touched her cheek. His hand was cold. "You really are beautiful, you know. That's the tragedy of all this. You could have been happy, if you'd just trusted me." His hand moved to her throat, not squeezing, just resting there. A threat, a promise of what he could do. Then his phone rang. The sound shattered the moment. Mark stepped back, pulling it from his pocket. He looked at the screen and cursed under his breath. He answered, moving to the kitchen. "What? I told you I was busy." Maria couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Mark's body language shifted. He sounded agitated. Whoever was calling had interrupted something. This was her chance. Maybe her only chance. She moved as quietly as she could toward the door. Her hands reached for the lock. It was a deadbolt that required a key from the inside. She didn't have the key. Panic surged through her. Mark ended the call and turned around. He saw her at the door, his face contorted with rage. "Where do you think you're going?" He crossed the room in 3 strides. Maria screamed. She screamed as loud as she could, hoping someone, anyone, would hear. But the walls were thick and the building was too quiet. Mark's hand clamped over her mouth. Shut up, or I'll make this so much worse." Maria bit down on his palm. He yelped and pulled back. She used the moment to run, not to the door, but to the window. She grabbed a chair and swung it at the glass. It bounced off. Safety glass, unbreakable. Mark tackled her from behind. They crashed to the floor. Maria felt the air knock out of her lungs. She tried to crawl away, but he grabbed her ankle and dragged her back. She kicked at him, connecting with his face. He grunted but didn't let go. "You stupid bitch. I was going to be nice, but not anymore." His hands found her throat, and this time they squeezed. Maria clawed at his wrists, gasping for air. The room started to dim. Her thoughts became scattered. Isabella, Miguel, her mother, her life flashing not in grand moments but in small ones, morning coffee, her daughter's laugh, the way the sun looked through her kitchen window. Then everything went black. And Maria Santos, who had only wanted to be loved, who had only wanted someone to choose her, stopped fighting. The last thing she felt was not pain, but a profound sadness. Not for herself, but for her children who would have to live without her. For all the moments she would miss. For the warning she couldn't give to the next woman who would receive a kind message from a stranger. The next woman who would ignore the red flags because loneliness made people blind. The next woman who would believe that this time, finally, love had found her. Isabella's hands shook as she dialed her mother's number for the 7th time. It went straight to voicemail. Again. The recording of her mother's voice, cheerful and professional, felt like a knife twisting in her chest. "You've reached Maria. Please leave a message." She hung up without speaking. It was 9:30 at night. Her mother had left at 3 in the afternoon, promising to be home by evening. 6.5 hours, no texts, no calls, phone completely dead. Miguel sat on the couch, pretending to scroll through his phone, but Isabella could see the tension in his shoulders. "She's fine," he said, not looking up. Maybe her battery died. Isabella wanted to believe him, but something felt catastrophically wrong. She called Tita Clara, her mother's best friend. Clara answered on the second ring, her voice already tight with concern. "Have you heard from her?" Isabella asked. Clara hadn't. They spoke in rapid, escalating panic. Clara said she'd told Maria not to go, that meeting this man in a private location was dangerous, that she'd had a bad feeling from the start. Isabella felt anger flare alongside her fear. Why hadn't anyone stopped her? Why hadn't she done more to convince her mother? Clara said she was coming over. She'd be there in 20 minutes. They would figure this out together. Isabella hung up and stared at her phone. She opened her mother's last text. "I'm fine. Having dinner. We'll update soon." The words felt hollow now. Performative, like something someone says when they're trying to convince themselves. By 10 o'clock, Clara arrived with her husband. They sat around the small dining table, trying to piece together information. Isabella showed them her mother's Tinder conversations with Mark Rivera. The messages were consistent, attentive, nothing overtly suspicious. But Clara's husband, a lawyer, pointed out what they'd all missed. "There's no last name verification on dating apps. Mark Rivera could be anyone. Do you have an address?" Isabella scrolled back through the messages. Her mother had mentioned Passe, a condo building near the bay, but no exact address. "We need to call the police," Clara said. Her husband nodded. They dialed the local precinct. The officer who answered sounded bored, distracted. He asked basic questions. How old was Maria? When was she last seen? Had there been any arguments or domestic issues? Isabella tried to explain. Her mother had gone to meet a man from a dating app. She hadn't returned. Her phone was off. The officer sighed, a sound Isabella would remember for the rest of her life. "Ma'am, adults are allowed to stay out." Maybe she decided to spend the night with her boyfriend. Give it until morning. Isabella's voice cracked. "You don't understand. My mother wouldn't do this. She promised to check in. Something is wrong." The officer told her to file a formal missing person report if her mother didn't return within 24 hours. Then he hung up. Isabella stared at the phone in disbelief. 24 hours. Her mother could be anywhere, hurt, scared, dead, and the police wanted her to wait. Clara's husband made more calls. He had connections, friends in the justice system. By midnight, he'd convinced a detective to take the case seriously. Detective Santos, no relation, arrived at the apartment at 1 in the morning. He was in his 50s, heavy-set, with tired eyes that had seen too much. He sat at their table and took notes while Isabella walked him through everything. The Tinder profile, the messages, the video calls, the dates, the final text. Detective Santos asked for screenshots. Isabella sent him everything. He studied the profile photo of Mark Rivera. "This image could be stolen," he said. "We'll run it through our database, but these guys are usually smart. They use photos from social media, from people in other countries." He asked if Maria had mentioned any specific details about the condo. Isabella shook her head. "Just Passé near the bay. A building with a security guard." Detective Santos radioed his team. Within an hour, 2 officers were canvassing condo buildings in the Passé area, showing Mark's photo to security guards and front desk staff. Most buildings were locked down for the night, unhelpful. But one guard at a building 3 blocks from Manila Bay recognized the photo. He was here earlier, with a woman. They went up to the 4th floor. The officer asked which unit. The guard checked his logbook. Unit 4C short-term rental. Paid in cash under the name Ramon Torres, not Mark Rivera. The officer called Detective Santos. They had a location. Santos told Isabella to stay home, to wait, but she couldn't. She grabbed Miguel, and they followed Clara's car to Passé. By 3 in the morning, they were standing outside the building while police broke down the door to Unit 4C. The apartment was empty. Forensics swept the scene with flashlights and cameras. Isabella watched from the hallway, her heart in her throat. She saw the sparse furniture, the single chair, the spot on the living room floor where the carpet looked darker, disturbed. One of the forensic officers knelt down and swabbed it. "Blood," he said quietly. "Not a lot, but it's here." Isabella's knees buckled. Clara caught her. Miguel turned away, his shoulders shaking. Detective Santos approached them, his face grim. "We're treating this as a crime scene now. We'll process everything, but I need you to prepare for the possibility that your mother is in serious danger." Isabella couldn't breathe. She'd known something was wrong, but hearing it confirmed felt like falling into a void. They found her mother's purse in the kitchen trash, buried under empty food containers. Inside was her wallet, her ID, her keys, everything except her phone. Detective Santos bagged it as evidence. "He's trying to make it hard to identify her," he said. "That's not a good sign." Isabella felt her mind fracturing. She thought about her mother's body somewhere, unidentified, lost. She thought about all the things she'd said the last time they spoke. Had she told her mother she loved her? She couldn't remember. The details were blurring. Clara drove them home as the sun began to rise. Isabella didn't sleep. She sat by the window, staring at her phone, willing it to ring. Willing her mother to call and say this was all a misunderstanding. At 6 in the morning, a fisherman named Ernesto was checking his nets near the Passé shoreline. He saw something dark floating near the rocks. At first, he thought it was garbage, a bag of trash someone had dumped. But as he pulled it closer with his hook, he felt the weight, too heavy, too dense. He radioed the Coast Guard. They arrived within 30 minutes, pulling the black duffel bag onto their boat. They unzipped it carefully. Inside, wrapped in plastic, were human remains. A woman. The body was in the early stages of decomposition, but still identifiable. The Coast Guard called it in immediately. Detective Santos received the call at 7. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then called Isabella. She knew before he said the words. She heard it in his tone, the careful gentleness, the practiced sympathy. "We found a body. We need someone to identify her." Isabella went with Clara and Miguel. They drove in silence. The morgue was cold and smelled like disinfectant and something else, something organic and wrong. A technician led them to a viewing room. Through a window, they could see the body on a steel table, covered with a white sheet. The technician pulled the sheet back from the face. Isabella heard a sound come from her throat, something animal and broken. It was her mother, pale, bruised, but unmistakably her. Miguel turned and vomited in a trash can. Clara held them both while they sobbed. Detective Santos confirmed the identification. Maria Santos, 42 years old. Cause of death, asphyxiation. Estimated time of death, approximately 18 hours prior. The investigation moved quickly after that. Detective Santos released Mark Rivera's photo to the media. Within hours, tips flooded in. 3 women came forward saying they'd matched with him on dating apps under different names. Mark Rivera, Ramon Torres, Carlo Mendoza. All fake. But the photos were consistent. Security footage from the condo building captured him leaving at 9:47 the night of Maria's murder, carrying a large duffel bag to a car parked outside. License plate visible. The car was traced to a rental company in Makati. The rental agreement was under another fake name, but the credit card used had a trail. It led to a small house in Cavite, where a man named Eduardo Salazar lived. His real name, his real identity. Police surrounded the house 3 days after Maria's body was found. Eduardo came out with his hands up, calm and cooperative. He didn't resist. Inside his home, detectives found a laptop with multiple dating profiles, hundreds of conversations with women, spreadsheets tracking their responses, their vulnerabilities, their schedules. A methodical system. Eduardo wasn't just a killer. He was a predator who had refined his technique over years. During interrogation, he confessed, not out of remorse, but out of pride. He described how he selected his victims, women in their late 30s or 40s, divorced or widowed, single mothers, women who were lonely and desperate enough to ignore warning signs. He admitted to killing Maria. He said she'd become too suspicious, too difficult. She'd tried to leave, and he couldn't allow that. He'd strangled her, panicked when he realized what he'd done, then disposed of her body in the bay. He'd done it before, twice. 2 other women in the past 18 months. Both cases had been classified as missing persons, thought now they were reclassified as homicides. Families who had spent years wondering what happened to their daughters, their sisters, their mothers, finally had answers. But answers didn't bring anyone back. Eduardo showed no emotion when describing the murders. He spoke about the women like objects, like problems he'd solved. The psychologist who evaluated him diagnosed him with narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial traits. The report stated he had no capacity for empathy, no remorse, no understanding that what he'd done was wrong. The trial lasted 3 months. Isabella attended every day, sitting in the front row, forcing herself to look at Eduardo. She wanted him to see her. To know that Maria wasn't just a body in a bag, she was a person, a mother, someone loved. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. The DNA, the security footage, the digital trail. Eduardo's own confession. His defense attorney tried to argue diminished capacity, a psychological break, but the premeditation was too clear. The fake identities, the rental agreements, the disposal of the body. Everything pointed to a man who knew exactly what he was doing. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts, 3 counts of murder, multiple counts of fraud, kidnapping. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Isabella read a victim impact statement in court. Her voice shook but didn't break. My mother was not perfect. She made mistakes. She trusted someone she shouldn't have. But that doesn't mean she deserved to die. She deserved to grow old, to see her children graduate, get married, have families of their own. Eduardo Salazar took all of that from her, from us. He saw her loneliness and weaponized it. And I hope every day he spends in prison, he thinks about what he stole. Not just her life, but her future. Our future. Eduardo stared straight ahead. He didn't react, didn't look at her. Even then, he refused to acknowledge her humanity. After the trial, Isabella started a foundation in her mother's name, the Maria Santos Project. It focused on dating app safety, educating women about red flags, providing resources for those who suspected they were being manipulated or abused. She spoke at universities, community centers, women's shelters. She showed her mother's photo, not the crime scene images, but the one from the family gathering. The yellow dress, the genuine smile. She was smart, Isabella told audiences. She was careful, but he was better at lying than she was at detecting it. This can happen to anyone. Anyone. The foundation partnered with dating app companies, pushing for better verification systems, background checks, safety features. Progress was slow, but it was progress. Miguel struggled more quietly. He stopped playing basketball. His grades dropped. He withdrew into himself. Isabella tried to reach him, but grief had made him unreachable. It took 2 years and a therapist before he could talk about his mother without shutting down. Even then, the loss was a weight he carried everywhere. He told Isabella once, late at night, that he blamed himself. If he'd been more suspicious, if he'd insisted their mother not go, if he'd gone with her. Isabella held him and told him what she'd learned in therapy. That guilt was easier than helplessness, that blaming yourself gave you the illusion of control, but the truth was simpler and harder. They couldn't have stopped it. Their mother had made a choice, and Eduardo had made one too. Years passed. The story faded from headlines. But for Isabella, it never faded. Every birthday her mother missed, every holiday, every milestone. The absence was a presence. She thought about her mother's last moments, the fear she must have felt, the realization that everything had been a lie. Isabella hoped her mother's final thoughts had been of them, of her children, of the life she'd built despite everything. She hoped her mother knew she'd been loved, that her death wouldn't be meaningless, that Isabella would make sure of it. On the 5th anniversary of her mother's death, Isabella visited the bay where her body had been found. She brought flowers, sampaguita, her mother's favorite. She stood at the water's edge and spoke aloud. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry the world was full of men like him. But I promise you, Mama, I'm doing everything I can to make sure other daughters don't have to stand where I'm standing. Other mothers don't end up where you did." The water was calm that day, almost peaceful. Isabella dropped the flowers into the waves and watched them float away. She thought about hope, how her mother had dared to hope for love, for connection, for a second chance, and how that hope had been turned into a weapon. But Isabella refused to let hope be the villain. Hope wasn't the problem. The problem was predators who understood how to exploit it, who learned to mimic kindness, to perform empathy, to say exactly what lonely people needed to hear. The problem was a society that told women their value was in being chosen, in being loved, in making themselves smaller and more palatable and less suspicious. The problem was a justice system that didn't take missing women seriously until it was too late. Her mother's story wasn't a cautionary tale about hope. It was a cautionary tale about the men who hunted hope like prey. As Isabella turned to leave the bay, she made a promise to herself and to her mother. She would keep speaking, keep fighting, keep making noise, because silence was what predators relied on. Shame was their greatest weapon. And Maria Santos's daughter refused to be silent or ashamed. Her mother had wanted love. There was no crime in that. The only crime was Eduardo's. And every day Isabella woke up and continued her work. She was proving that he hadn't won. He'd taken her mother's life. But he hadn't taken her mother's legacy. That belonged to Isabella now. And she would carry it forward until every woman who swiped right, who answered a message, who dared to hope for connection, had the tools to protect herself from the monsters who wore the mask of love.